If you found this video, it wasn't by accident. Maybe you're in a stage of your life right now where you're letting comfort hold you back, where you're giving in to your fears and letting risk stop you from doing what you really want to do. Now, obviously, there's a limit between being wise and being over-consumed with overthinking and dwelling in the bad things that could go wrong. Obviously, there are real possibilities out there that things could go wrong, but oftentimes it is our imagination of things going wrong that holds us back from doing what we know is right. So this is a very important topic, a topic very close to my heart, because I found that when I first discovered self-improvement and philosophy, specifically Stoicism, which teaches us to focus on what's in our control, to practice virtue, and to endure discomfort with equanimity, that's when my life started to become really meaningful and I started to actually respect myself. Respecting yourself is an amazing feeling, but you have to earn that feeling. I'm not a believer in, we should all just love ourselves and do nothing for the rest of our lives because we're all perfect exactly the way we are. I believe we're all flawed individuals. We're all sinners at some level, some worse than others, but we could all be better. And it is in the pursuit of becoming better and becoming wiser that we are redeemed. Comfort is pleasurable in the short term, but often taxing in the long term. It's pretty comfortable, not exercising, not following a strict diet. It's pretty comfortable not working a job or not trying to plan for the future. But I don't think it's a very wise strategy to live and thrive and survive in this world. Everything that does not move stagnates, and oftentimes it is in stagnation and stillness that we find comfort. We like what is familiar, but when we stay in what is familiar, we don't grow, because everything that is new, everything that is outside of what we are, exists in the unknown. Now, the unknown is scary. I understand that. I think we all understand that. But you have to have the courage to confront it. You have to have the courage to willingly embrace discomfort. I have a couple of notes here that I wanted to talk about specifically in this video, so as to prevent me from going too far off track and off topic. So I want to talk about an area of the brain which is called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. I learned about this area of the brain on a podcast with Andrew Huberman, who is a great professor of neuroscience, and David Goggins, who is a fantastic athlete, an ultra-marathon runner, and one of the most disciplined men you'll ever meet or you'll ever know. This is very interesting, and it arose in their discussion because David Goggins is obviously a huge proponent of willpower and strong willpower. Having a strong will and being able to persist in the face of discomfort and challenge. Andrew Huberman brought up the anterior mid-cingulate cortex because it has been recently found to be the seat of willpower. Now, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex is built and grows by us engaging in difficult things, things that we don't want to do. Now, for example, there's an important distinction to make here, because things that are difficult are not necessarily things that we don't want to do. Like, for example, I love mixed martial arts. So training in mixed martial arts, although it is difficult, is something that I'm not opposed to doing. It's something that doesn't challenge my willpower because I love to do it. And so it is not forcing my anterior mid-cingulate cortex to grow. It has to be something that you don't want to do, which is what makes it so uncomfortable, right? Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, famously said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." And if you really enjoy doing something, then the difficulty and discomfort of doing it pales in comparison to the meaning you have for doing it. But when you really don't want to do something and it is uncomfortable to do, man, it takes a lot of willpower to be able to still do that thing. And this is why David Goggins, all the time, he talks about running, because obviously he runs a tremendous amount. Maybe too much. I'd say too much. Even he would probably say too much. But it's not that he loves running, or he runs because he loves it. He runs because it is something he hates doing. He's said this multiple times. He says, "This is how I build my willpower. Is because I hate doing it. I wake up and I dread it. You know, sometimes I look at my running shoes in the morning and I'm just like, fuck, I don't want to do this." But that's where willpower comes from. It's forcing yourself, contrary to how you feel in that moment, to do it anyway. You know? Without that essential part, then there is no willpower. Willpower is forcing yourself to do it. And you can only force yourself to do it when, number one, you don't want to do it. And number two, there are practical reasons why you don't want to do it, because it's really uncomfortable. And it's not like it's something that you really love to do or you're really passionate about doing. Like, some people love running, and so that dulls the pain of it, right? That dulls the discomfort. At least they can actually enjoy it. But if you hate it, man, it's even more challenging for you, which just makes the growth that you can get as a result of doing it anyway even more immense. And that's the message I really want to push across in this video. It's not to do stuff that you don't want to do and that's uncomfortable, to do a disservice to yourself, to actually hurt yourself, to inflict harm upon yourself. That's not the message we're trying to push across here. The message we're trying to push across is, well, the message that I'm trying to put across is, there will always be things in life that you don't want to do and that are uncomfortable, but deep down, you know you should do. You know, I know I should work out. I know I should train, and it doesn't matter how much I like training or how uncomfortable it is, I'm going to do it anyway, because I value my body, I value my health. I know it's important in my life. And so I have a deeper meaning that can beset the suffering that accompanies it and make it worthwhile and endurable. So this area of the brain, the mid-cingulate cortex, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, is critical for the ability to persist in the face of challenges. And so growing it is of vital importance, because there's never going to be a time in our life when we are not challenged and when challenges are not on the horizon. Challenges are a constant in life, you know, and they come in many forms. But one thing that is for certain, you know, alongside death and taxes in life, is that there will be challenges. We will be challenged. we will be pushed in many instances to our absolute limits. But that is where we see what we are really made of. Now, I wrote a note here as well about exposure therapy. Now, exposure therapy is a psychological method of helping people overcome things like phobias. And it's actually very effective. It's arguably the most effective treatment for phobias, is gradual exposure. Obviously not just like flooding, which would be, you're scared of spiders, right, you're going into an enclosed small space with a bunch of spiders and you don't have a say in the matter. It's not like that. It's, let's say somebody's scared of spiders, and so first of all you show them a picture of a spider, and maybe they're going to feel a bit of fear, they're going to feel a bit of anxiety, right? That's probably normal for them. But then what you're going to get them to do is assess how they feel. Go, look, it's not hurting you, it's just a picture, you know, just look at it. I just want you to look at it. You don't need to get close to it, you don't need to touch it, just look at it. And then they're going to get braver as a result of that, because they've took one step. No matter how small that step is, they've took one step closer to what they fear. That is becoming braver. That is growing in courage. It doesn't matter how small the steps are. It matters that you're going in the right direction. And so then what you would do is, once they're comfortable doing that, and once it's no longer really challenging them, because that's the important part, right? Draw it back to it. It needs to be challenging enough to actually bring growth out of them. And once they're comfortable with the picture, let's say, of the spider, then we're going to show them a spider in real life. Now that is a big jump, especially for someone who's really scared of spiders, right? It's a big jump. But they don't need to touch it once again. They don't need to get close to it. All they need to do is look at it from a distance, okay? And then we're going to get them to take a step closer and a step closer. We're not going to force it upon them, but we're going to encourage them to do so. And we're going to do that because they're going to see that it's not as dangerous or as scary as they thought. Or maybe that they are more courageous than they thought. And so they do that, and then they will touch the spider, and then the process goes on and on and on until eventually they've overcome their fear. Or maybe they haven't overcome their fear, but what they've proven to themselves is that they have an ability within themselves to still face their fears, no matter how scared they are. Because some of these phobias, although we can look at them from the outside and, you know, patronize these people and laugh at how silly the phobias seem to be, they're very real for these people, you know, and it's massive for them being able to confront those fears. And so they're like completely new people once they've overcome those fears. And so by using that analogy, the analogy of exposure therapy, and how by gradually exposing someone to what they fear voluntarily, they become braver. By someone voluntarily engaging in challenges that they don't necessarily want to face. Because think about it, that person, if they had their choice, they might really want to overcome their fear, which is obviously important and probably definitive in determining their success. Nobody really wants to be challenged. If we could live a life of no challenge and still be strong, then we would. But I would argue that the end goal of being strong is what motivates us to be challenged. It's like, if I'm really strong, yeah, sure, challenge me. You know why? Because it will just give me an opportunity to prove my strength that I've worked so hard for. And it will give me an opportunity to also grow as well. So it's a win-win for me from my perspective. But if you're already, feeling weak and you haven't overcame challenges recently, and recently is important as well because we talked about this, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, it shrinks if you don't persist in the face of challenges that you don't want to face regularly. So it can't be a year ago, it can't be 2 years ago. This is something that we have to consistently do if we want to maintain our strength. It's like, I can't go to the gym, right, let's say I go to the gym for 2 years, yeah? And then I don't go for 10. And I'm always relying on that 2 years. I'm like, yeah, but I did the 2 years. Yeah, but I did the 2 years. I'll be good. I'm good. I ain't got to focus on my diet. Nah, I did the 2 years of training. I'm good. I ain't got to focus about my muscles. They're not going to shrink. I did the 2 years of training, man. We would all agree that's ridiculous. And so the same thing applies to our strength and to our ability to persist in the face of challenges, i.e., our willpower, our determination, our endurance, our tenacity, our persistence and perseverance. These are all skills that can be built, and the only way we can build them is by exposing ourselves to the things that make us feel opposed, that make us feel, oh man, I don't want to do this. And you know that feeling. We all know that feeling. There's something you're thinking about right now, probably watching this video. There's something that you're thinking of that you feel that way about. And maybe that's exactly where the growth you're looking for lies, involuntarily facing that thing. It's like today, for example, I went on a 5k run. I haven't run in a while, I'm a pretty regular runner. I have been a pretty regular runner in the past, but obviously I can't rely on that. But it has built some nuclei within me and a level of cardiovascular ability that I think is pretty good. And so I went for that 5k run today. But the whole day before it, I was kind of putting it off. I was like, I don't really want to run today, man. I don't want to run. I just don't want to. Let me do this, let me do that. But sometimes you just gotta say, fuck it. I'm gonna do it. Even though I don't want to do it, I'm gonna do it. That's discipline. That's acting despite your feelings. If you rely on your feelings, you'll never get anywhere. Because all emotions, are temporary. We can't rely on them. But if we have self-control and discipline, we can rely on that. And that is something we have control over. Whereas our emotions are largely outside of our control. So here we go. If you don't push through challenges on a regular basis, as we talked about, if you don't do things that you don't want to do on a regular basis, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex shrinks and it gets smaller. In other words, your willpower decreases. The fact that this has been scientifically proven and it's no longer pseudoscience is so amazing, because anybody who wants to doubt this and just brush it off, well, this is factual. There's no disputing this now. What you do with the facts is up to you. And it is our interpretation of facts that determine what we do, what we believe, how we feel. And so be careful with the way you interpret facts, but know that this is a fact, that if you do not persist in the face of challenges regularly, your willpower gets weaker. I think we all, if we're sound and right-minded individuals, want to have a strong will. We want to be disciplined and self-controlled individuals. But if we don't consistently expose ourselves to the challenges that we avoid, then we cannot grow and we cannot maintain any sense of willpower that we have. And kind of, this reminds me of when Carl Jung says, where your fear is, there your task is. You know, it kind of epitomizes this. So, the less challenges that you overcome, the weaker you are. It's as simple as that, and obviously that seems pretty self-evident and like common sense. The more challenges you overcome leads to you being able to overcome harder challenges. You know, it's like anything, progressive overload. Eventually what was hard for you then becomes easy. And this is the beauty of progress, you know? It doesn't matter where you start. There's no limit to where you can end. That's up to you. That's completely up to you. You know, some limitations may be in place that you can't remove or overcome, but you can push it, and you don't know how far you can push it, because if you did know how far, then would you even try, or would you already be there? Who knows? It's probably pointless to think about, but it's interesting, right? To become more self-controlled, you must resist temptation. To become more comfortable, you have to face more discomfort. To become braver, you have to face what you fear. And this is the perfect epitomization of the interplay of opposites. It's amazing. And I think it's super powerful knowledge, and that's why I decided to sit down here and to talk about it with whoever's watching this. And no doubt this video found you for a reason. This is a universal topic. It applies to us all, and there's definitely somewhere in your life where you can apply this knowledge and grow as a result. No doubt. You just got to look for it. Now you have the knowledge. You just have to see where it can be used. But yeah, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. And drop me a comment about what you thought about this video and anything you might like me to talk about. But yeah, I hope this video helped you, and I'll see you later. Take care.